Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened with interest to our Republican colleagues claim that dropping the corporate rate down far below the OECD average is the holy grail of U.S. competitiveness. That somehow American businesses and U.S. Entrepreneurial ecosystem are unable to compete with foreign counterparts without a significant tax advantage. But I believe that in order for the U.S. to outcompete our competitors, we need to out-innovate them. But unfortunately, the U.S. now ranks in the bottom half of the OECD when it comes to investment in research and development. And rather than enhance incentives for R&D, the Republican corporate tax bill actually went in the opposite direction, and it gutted critical tax incentives like the R&D tax credit. In addition, the poorly constructed beat is penalizing many businesses that are playing by the rules, creating jobs in the United States, while turning a blind eye to some of the worst base eroders. So, Secretary Clausen, what is more beneficial to the American economy and U.S. workers, a lower corporate rate or targeted tax incentives to increase research and development investments?
Needed to unmute. Thank you for that question. I absolutely think it's more important to focus on investing in both infrastructure and research and development rather than worrying about further reducing corporate taxes, which are now, as we've noted, we pay the lowest corporate taxes as a share of GDP of any OECD country, or right near the bottom. And that's despite the fact that our corporate profits are very high. So just looking at corporate profits as a share of GDP, they're much higher now than they were in decades past.
And I would assume research and development creates jobs here at home, and the high-paying jobs and the continuing effort to help us innovate and be competitive, for example, with China.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Research and development is essential to our future, as well as investing in education and having an economy that's open to the talents of the world, foreign students and immigration being, another important source of comparative advantage for the United States.
Now, the 2017 Republican corporate tax bill was the largest corporate tax giveaway in our nation's history, period, from my view. According to the Joint Committee on Taxation, Congress's nonpartisan scorekeeper, cutting the corporate rate from 35% to 21% cost a whopping $1.5 trillion alone, nearly the entire price of the entire package. As a result, in 2018, the average tax rate paid by U.S. corporations dropped by more than half to only 7.8%. Now, I know most families in New Jersey would love such a sweetheart deal to pay a federal tax rate of less than 8%. But because working families aren't politically connected and don't make big campaign contributions, they got stuck paying the bill as millions now face double taxation due to the new cap Republicans put on the state and local tax deduction. So again, Secretary Clausen, in your opening statement, you noted that the U.S. only collects about 1% of its GDP worth of corporate tax, which is half the level we collected prior to the GOP corporate tax bill and 1/3 of the OECD average. So how did the 2017 GOP corporate tax bill shift the tax burden between corporations and individuals? And can you explain the tangible impact this large cut in corporate taxes has on middle class families in New Jersey and, for that fact, across the nation?
Yeah, so when we cut corporate taxes so dramatically, one of two things have to happen. Either we're increasing the relative burden on others in the economy, and that's definitely true. The relative amount of taxes paid by households and small businesses is higher relative to that paid by corporations. But we also put a lot of budget pressure on, the government. We raise only about 16% of GDP in federal revenue right now. The last time we balanced the budget, it was 20% of GDP. And so when you look at those consequences, they're pretty important for middle class families. And when you look at that 2017 law, the provisions that were permanent were those that cut corporate taxes, whereas the provisions that are permanent on the individual side are those that make health insurance more expensive for the most vulnerable among us, and those that change the inflation indexing of the tax code in a way that's a stealth tax increase on the middle class. So those permanent provisions show a real shifting of the burden, again, away from corporations and toward middle-class Americans.
So corporations got a permanent cut, and average citizens in short order will then find themselves again with a whack. Thank you
That's
very
right.
much.